Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the third decan of Aquarius. This is a pretty big full moon, my friends. We've got a square with Uranus, we've got a big T square with planets in mutable signs, and today we're going to spend an hour or two just breaking it all down, chatting, discussing, sharing stories, trying to help one another out. So I'm so happy that you're joining me here today. Please, if you are joining me, please drop me a comment in the comment box here. Let me know where you're stopping in from, and we'll try to have a great afternoon. Oh, Stephen the Jupiterian says, good day to you all. Hello from partly sunny San Francisco. Nice to see you, Stephen. I like that shirt. It says, I'm a Pisces. I love when we can announce our astrological profiles with our wear. Yeah, so good to have you here today, friend. Rachel Fletcher is stopping in. Says hello from Roanoke, Virginia. I love your little purple owl heart there. Nice to see you, and hope you're doing well over there in Virginia. Tom Hines is here. Says namaste and good morning from sunny San Francisco. Nice to see you, Tom. Hope you're doing well over there on the west side. Sergey is stopping in. Says hello from Virginia once again. Nice to see you, Sergey. Hope things are going well with you today also. All right, friends. So we have some ground to cover today for sure. But I'm so happy that you have chosen to spend a few hours out of your afternoon with me here today. A couple announcements before we dive into it. So I, of course, am a professional astrologer. I like to use Hellenistic techniques, traditional astrological techniques. I do use some modern techniques as well. I also incorporate the tarot, fixed stars, and the I-Ching into my readings, as well as animal symbolism. So if you are finding that you're needing some extra guidance, reach out, check out spencermichaud.com, click on the Book Now button. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you, spend some time with you, talk about your chart, see what the stars have in store for you, and that's available at my website, spencermichaud.com. I also have the final days of a Leo season sale. If you're enjoying the work that I'm doing here on this channel, I have a Decan webinar series that I did that includes all 12 signs and all 36 decans, and each of them have a treatment of 2.5 to 3 hours. So you can find the decans of Leo on sale right now for 20% off until the end of Leo season. It's the last weekend of Leo season. And then you might see the Virgo planets Decan webinar go on sale. So pick that up while you still have a chance, and it's a great way to support the channel. I also have a beautiful partner named Tanya Andrews who has a magical business named Third Coast Mojo over on Etsy. And she does excellent work being able to draw down the energy of particular planets so that you can remediate some of the challenging placements you might have in your chart, or, you know, give you a little boost if you want to incorporate some of the planets at their best into your life. And right now, Mercury in Virgo is a good one that's highlighted right now. Since we have Mercury retrograde right now, a little bit of extra organizational boost could be useful. So check out Third Coast Mojo. That Mercury in Virgo oil is pretty awesome. I wear it almost every day. It was formulated with Mercury in the third decan of Virgo, which has dignity by face, domicile, and exaltation. So just a really juiced up Mercury. Really good stuff. Check her out, Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy a little super chat with a dollar sign in the YouTube chat today, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and support the channel over there. Really do appreciate everyone who helps me keep the lights on here, helps buy me the gift of time to continue to do this research and to hopefully bring you some guidance through the language of the stars. So thank you so much for everyone who is able to contribute in that fashion. All right, friends. Let's start getting down to business. I'm going to check back in the chat here. Stephen says, this full moon is conjoining my natal Mercury in the third house. Oh my goodness, Stephen. So that's going to be a big one for you. This picture you have here is quite something I'm seeing here, Stephen. Is this a new mullet? Is this a mullet that you've got going on here, bud? Because I'm here for it. It looks pretty awesome. I think it's quite stylish, my friend. Yeah, third house full moon. You know, probably a lot of communications coming your way, and a lot of things to work through as far as your own belief systems versus working within more orthodox systems of belief. Uranus Ascending is here. What's up? Nice to see you, friend. My friend from Aurora, Illinois. Happy that you're spending your afternoon with us. And I believe you just had a birthday, or you might have a birthday coming up, my friend. So I hope that you're doing well and having a great solar return and a new year for you. Benel Dell is here. What's up, friend? I think that's my friend Laura. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well over there in Wisconsin. Packers season is right around the corner. Super excited. I'm a huge Packers fan, so excited to start watching football again. Ani is here. Says, good morning, Spencer. Nice to see you, Ani. Always lovely to see you in the chat, my friend. Dimphy is stopping in from the Netherlands. Nice to see you, Dimphy. Hope everything's going well with your garden and you're having a nice, relaxing middle of summer here. Steven says, yes, I have a mullet. Nice. I'm here for it, Steven. I'm here for it. It's looking good, looking slick. Laura Elizabeth says, good morning from Vancouver, Washington. Volcano green lava orange. Nice. Okay. Nice to see you, Laura. Hope you're doing well. Thank you again for stopping in and being part of our community here today. Steven says their partner is a hairstylist. Well, you've got the ultimate 80s throwback there, my friend. A time period that is near and dear to my heart. So I haven't quite gone mullet yet, but maybe one day. We'll see. Robin Nadira is here. Says, hi, Spencer and crew. Robin from Northern California. Excited to see what the full moon in Aquarius will bring. I'm so glad you're here, Robin. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying cool over there in California and everything is going well your way. Uranus ascending is confirming that it was her birthday last Sunday. So yes, nice to see another revolution around the sun. Lashiner is here. Nice to see you. That's a new name. Nice to see you, my friend. Stopping in from Mount Horeb in Wisconsin. Okay, so maybe we've got another Packers fan out there. This is a very Packers friendly territory. We, of course, if you're not a Packers fan, that's fine. I totally understand. What I think I really appreciate most is people who have passion for their teams or for whatever it is in their life that lights their fire. Fionn is here. What's up, Fionn? My favorite comedian from Ireland, I believe. Happy time zones, appropriate greeting. Yes, nice to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well. Mariana joining us from Argentina. Nice to see you, Mariana. Argentina in the room, listening from Germany. Oh my gosh, what a globetrotter. Glad to be able to participate in this live. Well, I'm glad you're here too, Mariana. And I'm so happy that our international friends are stopping in here. We've got Ireland represented. We've got Argentina via Germany. I believe we probably got our Finnish friends in here somewhere. We've got the Netherlands represented, the United States. Oh my goodness, it's just it's a global celebration that we have here of each other. All right, friends, so happy that you're joining me here today. Let's start talking about this full moon. What do you say? It has been quite a week, right? It's been quite a week. We had Jupiter moving through this malefic enclosure energy. We are past that point now since we had the Mars-Jupiter conjunction on Wednesday. And now we're heading into this big T-square with all these mutable planets. We have a T-square with the Sun, Mercury, Uranus, and the Moon at the full moon. So there's like dueling T-squares. There's a fixed T-square and a mutable T-square. So a lot of different energy pulling us in a lot of different directions. And there's probably going to be some parts of our life where we're holding on very stubbornly to something that we desire, a position that we have long cherished or held dear. But that is going to be tested through the necessity of change, through just the spinning of the planet, asking us to make some adjustments. And we see that with those planets in the mutable signs. So we'll break it all down piece by piece for you. But those are some of my big picture thoughts. A lot of the other challenges we'll have with this full moon. We do have a Mercury cazimi that we'll be coming off of over the weekend. Mercury cazimi is when Mercury is conjoining the sun, getting renewed in the heart of the sun. This is the retrograde cazimi. My good friend Gary Caton liked to compare that to Hermes entering the underworld in its psychopomp form or psychopomp phase, where it's kind of guiding the souls to the underworld. And I tend to interpret that as going internal for some wisdom, either from our past or from our own internal experience rather than from an external source. So we might be getting some really interesting realizations about how we maintain a sense of empowerment, how we need to potentially let go of a cherished position that we we'll defend with our passion, with our courage. There's going to be a lot of balancing acts with what types of experiences and beliefs are we willing to go to battle over, and which ones do we need to say, you know what, maybe we should live to fight another day. And nothing wrong with that. Like that is actually sometimes one of the most mature and enlightened things that you can do, is be able to recognize when a cause, I guess, is lost, or if it requires change. And I don't even think calling it a lost cause is even appropriate. I think oftentimes we need to retreat instead of continuing on to fight, or we'll exhaust ourselves or burn ourselves out to the point where defeat will be certain. So I think that's part of this. There will also be a wild card with Uranus squaring this. Uranus is going to be squaring from Taurus. So probably something else that we can't quite see on the horizon. And yeah, I think that, again, the Sun in Leo 3, courageous acts with your back against the wall, defending a position of power. Aquarius 3, knowing when to say when to venture off into the unknown, how to feel comfortable in an exiled land with the moon there. The moon does have Decanic dignity there, so we'll break it all down for you. I'm going to check back in with the chat. We've got some nice comments coming in here. Manel Dell says, glad to find him make it back. I tried to see you this week as Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn are showing us the hard truths, but alas, Madison is finally not so wet. Glad to see you, Spencer. I'm glad to see you, friend. And yeah, if you need some extra guidance, friend, I'm available for readings or whatnot, even if you need to kind of process things that have happened. But I'm glad that you're here today. Steven says, I was a teen in the 80s and never had a mullet, but I didn't join the trend back then. Well, Steven, now you're in the trend, you know, like maybe it's a solar Saturn return of the mullet that never was, Steven. So it's fun. Taria is here. It says, one Finnish fried is about to sleep. Fried, I'm assuming that means friend, but maybe you're just a fried friend, Taria. But I'm glad that you're stopping in and blessing us with your presence, even if it's for a little bit, and hopefully we will drift you off into dreamland with some useful astrological insights. Sergey says, historic aspects with this one. Absolutely. I think we have some historic events happening along with it, especially in America, with the Democratic National Convention starting around this full moon. So this chart very much lights up the charts of Kamala Harris, of Donald Trump, of Joe Biden. So there's a lot of activity going on within those charts of important political players on a national stage for Americans, but also I think that it's a global event, I would say, on some level as well. Lashner says, one jump ahead of the lawman, that's all, and that's no joke. These guys don't appreciate that I'm broke. Once in every life, someone comes along. Nice. There you go. All right. So let's pull the chart up here and see what we've got going on. What do you say, friends? So we're going to make sure we know what's going on. Here's our full moon in Aquarius 3, becoming exact at 2:25 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in my location of Michigan in the United States. Make the appropriate adjustment for your time zone and location. And you could see here some of the big picture thoughts that we were discussing were surrounding these beautiful placements right here. Let's get rid of that arrow. We want circles. Let's get some circles going. So there's the Sun and Mercury. The Mercury retrograde is making its Cazimi, or renewal, in the heart of the Sun on the 18th, the day before that. So this will start to have a separation of Mercury and the Sun. So we'll probably get some insights over the weekend, particularly Sunday, on some things that are important to us and are worth defending. And we might also get some insights into things that we can't continue to I don't know, stand our ground upon. Now you can see here that the moon is in the third decan of Aquarius. If you are a tarot aficionado, tarot decan enthusiast, we're dealing with the Seven of Wands with the Sun. and the Seven of Swords for the moon. And you can see in those cards, and we'll see that when we share the Decan, some slides from the Decan webinars. One of those people in that card is defending a position, and the other is kind of sneaking away, taking wisdom with them and leaving behind that which is no longer serving them. So I think that this is definitely a full moon for trying to learn something from the battles that we fought in the past. Try to take with us wisdom while also not necessarily needing to cart around dead carcasses, right? We don't need to necessarily cart around the forms of the past that aren't bringing us vitality anymore. And that's really important. A lot of times we try to prop up either beliefs or physical forms or relationships or whatever it is that just really aren't appropriate for us anymore. And that's when we can start to really compromise our integrity. So a couple of the things we'll point out here. I'm just kind of keeping track of the chat here. So of course we have that square with Uranus. So we have the opposition between the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, and the square to Uranus. Again, we've been talking about Uranus and Taurus 3 as related to a lot of climate challenges. I think that Decan in particular shows us the results of our physical choices, our physical actions from the past, and then offers us the opportunity to make amends for it. There is a theme of humility in the face of nature. So oftentimes when we have Uranus transits in Taurus, we'll have an event that seems to humble us as humans. Oftentimes human beings feel like they are the dominant species or the only conscious life on this planet, which is, I think, a huge mistake. I've been doing a lot of reading from a very good book called Braiding Sweetgrass by an author named Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is an indigenous biologist, and just the ability to see life and other forms of life as having personhood, as having consciousness, as having an equal claim to this planet. And the interconnectedness between all of those things is really, really important. And I pull an animal every day for learning purposes for myself. And yesterday I got the wolf. This is a good demonstration of this energy. And the wolf talks about, finding your community, sometimes if you're feeling isolated or things of that nature. And oftentimes when I find an animal for my day, I will see it pop up in social media or one of my feeds or on Facebook or on the news or something like that. And I actually saw a wolf whose paw had been caught in a trap. And it was a video of someone trying to release this wolf and finally being able to do so successfully. And that really, it moved me. And then I went down to the comments section, which is always somewhat of a perilous journey on Facebook these days. And I was expecting the applause for a human being trying to do something positive to help an animal in need, but also understanding that people would be upset about harming an animal like that as well. And I did find both of those things, but I also found a very disturbing amount of people who were just so disconnected from nature that the best comments they could muster were in service of eliminating that animal completely through violent means. And I'll spare you all the details of that, but it was very disappointing. And what it did is it made me realize how much distance we have to go in these types of thoughts and feelings about humanity's responsibility as Earth citizens, as a community of beings, rather than as a user of resources or a abuser of our animal friends and communities. It was both disappointing, sad, and frustrating, but also it was galvanizing, I guess I will say, because a lot of the circles that I run in And especially, I've been having a really nice discussion with this book and book club. We share a viewpoint. We share a desire to connect with nature, and an ability to see, um, animals and trees and plants as brothers and sisters rather than as just inanimate objects. And I'm realizing that that isn't necessarily uh, the predominant viewpoint, and that there's a lot of work to go on that. And I think that that's could be part of this full moon type of experience too, is starting to see our role in nature a little bit differently, to decentralize our human centric viewpoint of the world. And I think that that is very Leo Aquarius tension, right? Leo is ruled by the sun. You've got the sun in its own domicile. You have the sun in a place that says, I want to be the center. I want to be the quote unquote king. I want to be the human centric, dominant species, etc. And then you have Aquarius coming in that is rising up from a broader perspective, hopefully a more interconnected perspective, seeing that these relationships, these connected interrelationships, are actually vital for the survival not only of those species, but of us as a part of nature, not as separate from it. I had some really nice insights from the beautiful people in my group that were talking about wolves that had been reintroduced into Yellowstone, and how, people had been a little bit nervous about that. But what it did is it actually started to completely transform the land back to a healthy ecosystem that they hadn't seen in many, many decades, because of the wolf's ability to help regulate different species within the ecosystem to create balance. And I think that's the key, is everything has its role and its purpose, and it is vitally necessary for the process of homeostasis or equilibrium or balance. And when we take one piece of it out, the entire system can collapse. And there was a beautiful chapter this week about restoring the salmon streams, the salmon rivers, removing dams that had prevented the salmon from returning home, and like how that helped to completely restore the natural waterways and whatnot. Sometimes when we feel like we're helping, we're actually making things worse. And I think that is an important realization. On the flip side, another really important realization that I think it is important to acknowledge is that a lot of times people talk about just being complete observers and not interfering in nature. And one of the things I'm learning from this book about an indigenous way of looking at the world is that there are instances where human activity and behavior is necessary for the ecosystem to thrive, right? There are circumstances where we are not only a part of it, but we are stewards of it, and we actually help other species to thrive. And I think that was a really important thing for me to see, as someone who oftentimes can get very down on humanity's role within these natural systems and can get a little bit depressed about it. I think that seeing that no, we are part of it, we are not separate from it, is very important, and it helps us to feel a sense of responsibility and belonging to that land. And this Aquarius full moon being squared by Uranus, I just think that there is an opportunity to reconnect with the land in a way that is very human, but also respectful of just us playing one particular role rather than having to control the entire process. So one of the things you can think about with this, how can you balance your involvement in something, okay, whether it's nature or your backyard, or whether it's a relationship or something metaphorical, right, versus your observation of it and realizing that you are just playing a small part and a small role in a much larger narrative and picture and interrelated interconnectedness. That to me is the essence of this full moon, is trying to see our individual roles within a greater context of a mycelial relationship. Mycelium being the underground structures of mushrooms that we see, the interconnected pathways, the maps, the underground roots that aren't visible but are necessary. The fruiting body of the mushroom, it's only one piece of it, right? Mushrooms are amazing beings, and they're really a communication superhighway for the forest. And it's just some really interesting research out there about them. So we've got that Sun and Moon squared Uranus, and we are coming off of the Mercury cazimi in Leo 3, right? We are dealing with an area of the zodiac in Leo 3 that is connected with a fixed star named Alphard, if I'm not mistaken. And Alphard is a fixed star in the Hydra constellation. So Hydra being the mythical being that Hercules fought, that had many heads, that kept sprouting heads after they had been cut off. Now, that is fascinating to me because that fixed star can speak to some emotional entanglements, some poisonous situations potentially, maybe even some habits that we have that are very difficult to control, whereas we may cut off one part of the problem and then it sprouts 3 more challenges. And I think one of the interesting things about that, I always look to myth to see how to solve some of these things. And the way that Hercules finally beat this Hydra was through cauterizing the heads by holding them up to the sun. And I think that's really an important realization and symbolism, because this Mercury cazimi may require us to bring some of those challenges, some of those darknesses into the light to be able to heal it, so it doesn't keep proliferating behind the surface and behind the scenes. Oftentimes when you acknowledge a problem, it's much easier to deal with it rather than it just festering in the background. And I think that could be one of the main parts of this cazimi potentially. And the other thing we're looking at here is just a huge T-square going on between Venus in Virgo, second decan of Virgo, the separating Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini 2, and then retrograde Saturn in Pisces. And what we've got going on here, a couple things. So first of all, Venus is in its own decan. It is in its fall with essential dignity, which means it's in a place that it is unhappy, or where it has some challenges bringing about its preferred significations of unification. But it has a little bit of a special dignity being in its own face. And this decan is really about being able to encapsulate spiritual essence or an ideal into matter. So this might be part of what we're experiencing here, is we really want to bring an idea and an ideal into physical form. But we are having this opposition with Venus to Saturn where we may run into some boundaries, some blockages. We may be overestimating our abilities, which is a theme of the second decan of Pisces. We may be creating boundaries for ourselves where none exist. Some themes that were chatted about in this beautiful book by Austin Coppock, 36 Faces, were, feeling the separation between our idealism and our dreams and the ability to manifest. This is a Jupiter ruled decan that when Jupiter is in this particular area of the zodiac, it's there is a flow between our spiritual selves and our physical being. There's an ease of it. It's a wish making type of decan. But when Saturn's there, it asks us to slow down. It asks us to be realistic about it. Sometimes it throws obstacles in our manifestation energy. So we may have a strong desire to bring something into being, but we may have either some belief systems that could be limiting, or we could have some very real obstacles. Maybe we don't have enough knowledge to do the thing that we're attempting to do. Maybe the circumstances just aren't right, or the time is not completely right. And all of this is going to be in this big T-square with both Jupiter in its exile in Gemini and Mars in its own face in Gemini too. So that decan of Gemini, that one's a little bit challenging. It's a Mars decan, so all the Mars decans can be a little bit fraught with peril. Remember, Mars likes to sever and separate, which is necessary. We need to eliminate things in our life as well as bring them into our lives. But when Mars is in Gemini, it uses the resources of Mercury to do that, to go to battle, to sever, to separate. And Mercury is in the Cazimi position. It's in a place that could speak to an enormous amount of pride. So we may be having to watch out for verbal conflicts that are based on wanting to defend our sense of authenticity or defend our cherished beliefs that we're willing to die for. Okay. And we have to really just be careful about being cruel with our communication and our words. This decan was called the Lord of Cruelty and Despair. So it's very easy to kind of lash out, especially verbally or intellectually. Now, Jupiter could be bringing us a lot of different choices, where this decan also was represented by paradoxes that weren't very easy to reconcile. So if you have a lot of choices in front of us right now, and you may have a lot of choices in front of you. So there might be a lot of things that are pulling you in a lot of different directions. You want to bring something into manifestation, into physical form, Venus. You may be feeling some spiritual blocks or some belief system blocks, or maybe overestimating our abilities, Saturn opposition. And those two things may feel irreconcilable. Now, there's a couple things you can do with that feeling. The first thing that comes to mind is just waiting it out. I've found that when there is two paths in front of me, oftentimes what I need to do is let time pass to get more information. Sometimes we just have to learn to sit with feelings of ambiguity. Sometimes we have to learn to be okay with not having all of the answers. Now, I will point out as well, Saturn is in the overcoming position to both Jupiter and Mars. That's important from a Hellenistic perspective, because that tells you that Saturn is basically in the driver's seat. Saturn is the one that's exerting pressure over those other two planets. And in this case, I think Saturn says you're not going to be able to rush it. Sometimes the universe, the Tao, however you want to describe it, has a different or better or just a plan that is worth surrendering to. And there's no way that you can find out more information about it. That is the great mystery of existence. Sometimes for all of our efforts, we just have to submit to the passage of time. And it's very painful for humans because, again, oftentimes we have fallen victim to a type of narcissism that puts us in the all-powerful, all-knowing position. And you will see this time and time again in the great spiritual traditions of the world. Is one of the greatest spiritual lessons is learning how to surrender and figure out what you don't know, or accept what you don't know. I don't think it's figuring it out. I think it's an acceptance. So I think those are some of the themes that are really popping out to me. So I'm going to check back in with the chat here, and we'll see if we can parse it out in even further detail potentially. So we've got some nice comments coming in. Stephen is saying the U.S. chart is getting a massive hit with Sagittarius rising as well. Yeah, so that's a good point, Stephen. United States chart with a Sag rising has that big mutable T-square in angular houses. And one of the things about Hellenistic astrology that we've learned is that when planets and aspects move through angular houses, or if we have those planets in our natal chart in angular houses, that being 1, 10, 7, and 4, we tend to feel those things more acutely, intensely, Those are called the goads, right? Where we're feeling goaded towards action. So we might actually see more action around this. So yeah, we'll have to see. Sergey says it also lights up Zelensky and Ukraine's charts. Oh boy. Um, yeah, so this is a global event, right? This isn't just an American centric event. The astrology is going to be touching us globally as well. So I pray for peace, and I pray for the ability for people to navigate these transits gracefully. But we'll kind of just have to see what it has in store for us. Susanna Schubert is here. Nice to see you. Susanna says the full moon is exact on my south node in the fourth, north node, Leo in the 10th house. Oh my goodness. So, Susanna, I have a similar position to you. We might be similar in age potentially. I have the south node in Aquarius and the north node in Leo. So you're going to be having this in a different angular house. I'll have it in my first and seventh house, and you're going to be having it in your 10th and fourth house. So this might be highlighting your role out in the world and what brings you meaning and purpose, and how you can make that meaning and purpose fit within your family, within your domestic situation, within your private life, and potentially some tension around that as well. That would, of course, I would say that would give you a Scorpio rising. So you might be feeling that T-square over the 11th, 8th, and 5th house like we're seeing on the chart right here. So I wish you luck with that, and live into the answers, right? Okay, let's see here. Dina says, are we supposed to do Scorpio things as the empty spot of this T-square? That's interesting. Potentially. I'm not sure that we need to do anything necessarily, Dina. I think that the empty portion of something, maybe that could bring us a sense of balance, I think. But if you think about it, that is completing a grand cross, which would be like adding even more fixity and a whole other desire into the mix. I would say, for our sanity and for your own, Dina, that maybe we could deal with just the energy of the three T-squared positions that are pulling us in three directions rather than four. But I do think having some balance, if you want to bring Scorpio energy into it, I don't think that it would ever be a mistake to be able to acknowledge which forms are ready to be returned back to the earth. I think that can always be a useful exercise. And I do think that that's one of the essences of Scorpio, is understanding when it's time to let go of a form and liberate the energy to find a new form. So I hope that that's helpful for you. I would say that if there's any energy that I would lean into in this full moon arrangement, in the T-square, I would understand that Saturn's kind of in charge, even though there is a sort of dignified Mars and like a little bit of a minor dignity for Venus. Saturn in the overcoming position, even though it's retrograde, it's exerting a lot of power within that T-square. As far as the T-square with the sun, the moon, and Uranus, the sun has a lot of dignity in Leo. It is its own domicile. So I do think that there is an opportunity to get clarity about what is very important to us, but also to understand how that important belief, that's worth defending, can fit within a greater communal set of relationships. I've heard other astrologers describe full moons as not necessarily needing to be solved, or oppositions not necessarily needing to be solved. Sometimes we just have to observe that we might be feeling pulled in multiple directions, and I think that's very wise. I will say this, though. The way that I have thought about full moons is, if you look at the sun and you think about that as a conscious set of motivations, like something that we're like really feeling like consciously that we want to move towards, The sun was often associated with eternity, spirituality, things of that nature. The moon was associated with the mundane, with the body, with things that were very changeable. So I see sometimes the sun trying to infuse a sense of purpose into the lunar body. And at full moons, oftentimes, to be able to manifest the ideals of the sun, we have to sort of approach it from an opposite fashion. So for us to be able to defend something that we believe in strongly, like I expressed a belief that I hold very dear in the beginning of this broadcast, the belief that we are all interconnected as beings, not only with humans, but with plants, with animals, with mushrooms, with bacteria, all of those things. It's all part of a, kind of a interconnected system. And each part of it is equally as important. And that to me is a belief that will animate my desire to defend that. But also, the body that it's going to inhabit is going to be one that is maybe more Aquarian, more about the interconnectedness, more about decentralizing our own individual role within that belief. I do feel that Aquarius is a sign, or Saturn is a planet that wants to decentralize in opposition to the sun, which wants to become the center. And I think those are the types of contradictions we're going to be holding here. That's a good question, Dina. Laura says, Dina, my Uranus is in that empty Scorpio spot while Saturn square and Jupiter is opposite my ascendant in Sagittarius. Yeah, I mean, Dina and Laura, I have Uranus in Scorpio also. So we're all going to be kind of feeling this Scorpio Uranus being activated by this T-square. So we'll just have to kind of live into the answer, right? And I think flexibility is one thing that's going to be called for, especially because we have a lot of planets in fixed signs, but we have a wild card with Uranus and Taurus, and we have a lot of mutability, a lot of like unanswered questions that we kind of have to gain more information about. Sergey says, enjoy the Grand Cross. Yes. Well, me too, right? I'll be right there with you, Laura. Candy Corn, Corinne is here. Says, hi, Spencer and friends. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Steven says, Venus and Virgo will be opposite my natal Venus in Pisces soon. Yeah, so this is another opportunity to try to understand paradoxes and things that are pulling you in opposite directions. With that Venus in Pisces, it's easy to feel a sense of oneness with everything that is. It's easier sometimes to surrender to the divine plan. Whereas sometimes people that have Venus and Virgo, that is not the easiest thing for them to do. Virgo has an energy of like, I have to actively participate and craft this, whereas Pisces is kind of allowing more of the current to take them where they're directed to go. So that might be a tension that comes up for you, Stephen. Okay. Dimphy says, me too. Oh, we've got all these people getting Uranus, right? Dimphy says, Saturn has passed my natal moon by 3 degrees in the 10th. Okay, we're going to be living out these transits. Ani says, decentralize. Excellent word choice for Aquarius. Yeah, I really feel that is a super important theme for us as human beings moving forward, especially as we get deeper and deeper into the Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions in air signs, the Pluto and Aquarius era. I think that we are being asked to step down from our thrones, right? And this is both applied to our leaders. Like there's movements going around that says no more kings, right? We don't want kings anymore. Like there's no use for that. There is an equality that humanity is striving towards. And at least I hope so. At least that's what I believe in. I know that maybe as I've learned going through social media and things of that in the last little bit, not everyone shares my ideals, and that's okay. But I do think that they're for the long-term survival of not only the other species on the planet, but for our own species. Being able to decentralize is paramount. It is a requirement, right? It is something that says we have to redistribute resources rather than consolidating them into one particular person, nation, be able to see how when we take care of others, we are actually taking care of ourselves as well. That's super important. I think this is the hardest thing for the consciousness to shift, is understanding that you aren't losing something. You're just keeping the organism healthy. Does that make sense? Like, people get really up in arms because they feel like, well, this is mine and I need to maintain, I got to get mine no matter what. And what they don't realize is that an unhealthy collective can't provide healthy individuals. It can't create healthy individuals. And I hear some of the arguments about not wanting to lose our individuality. That is going to be an important discussion as well. You know, we've got all these things with artificial intelligence and things like that, and what does it mean to be human, and artistic individualization and things like that. But being able to start to see that not only do we decentralize like leadership, like kings, even maybe, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about decentralizing countries. I don't think that, I'm not exactly sure how that would all work out. I consider myself a global citizen. I think that that's something that I take very seriously. I know some people are very afraid of one person trying to consolidate power in that regard, and that's an important thing to watch out for as well. Again, these aren't always easy answerable things in one astrology live stream. These are big topics we're talking about, right? But I do think that the other thing that, Ani, that sticks out to me about decentralization in Aquarius is just the decentralization of the human hubris, the human arrogance of thinking that we are the only important species on this planet and that everything else is in servitude to us. I think that's an enormous, enormous mistake. And I hope that we are able to start thinking in stewardship, like you're pointing out here, right? So Ani says, I think of it like being a steward and a stakeholder. We all have responsibility and a share, accountability through dispersion. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Ani says, North Natal Aquarius, South Node in the 10th. Break it up. Yeah. I have the South Node in Aquarius also. And then I have it in the 7th house, which is often, it's relationships, but it's also related to the public. So a lot of my public persona, I think, sometimes can take on Aquarian traits. I talk a lot about those themes in my life. So interesting just to see how we're all manifesting that. Yeah. Okay. Steven's getting hit on all the angles. Laura says, we cannot always feel our whole purpose is solely to give to others. Keep trying to find the balance in that paradox. Yeah, absolutely, Laura. And I think that one of the things that we're going to have to navigate is how do we make the necessary sacrifices, but also while maintaining our own needs and our own individuality, without necessarily feeling like we have to give up everything. Like, here's the thing. What this book talks about is such a good book. Pick it up. If you haven't, Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's really about reciprocity. When we truly are giving from our hearts, the messaging in that book is that nature will provide. It will be so generous with us if we just I'm just trying to think of the right words because these are deep topics. If we would just give it even the minimum amount of respect that it deserves, right? The stories, the myths that enliven indigenous cultures around the world are ones of great generosity, of that relationship as it being a mother that would provide for us. And one of the things that I think ultimately you'll learn about being a parent, yes, there are times when unconditional love is important. And I do think that the earth is very forgiving. And if we start having that type of relationship where we start respecting and caretaking and being good stewards of it, it will be even more generous. But if you keep abusing something over and over and over again, it has to withdraw to protect its own interest. I tend to view the earth as an organism, and I tend to see its reaction right now as a withdrawal to protect itself. These storms that you see, the temperature changes, these are all an attempt to rebalance the extremes that are happening on the surface of this planet. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And if we start doing things in a more harmonious and balanced way, we won't have these great swings of extremes. And this is really important to understand in our personal lives as well. Every time I'm talking about nature, balance, the environment, stewardship, all of these things, all of these macrocosmic issues can be applied to microcosmic issues in your family, in your relationships, in your jobs. Nature is always an incredible teacher and is not as concerned with scale as we humans want to apply to it. As above, so below. As within, so without. As tiny, so the large. So think about that as well. When you are going to extremes in your personal life and in your own individual lives, the opposite reaction that you are going to receive from the people around you, from the circumstances around you, will be more difficult to deal with rather than if you had a more balanced and moderate type of experience. This is my dad, bless his Piscean heart, has preached balance to me since I was a very, very young person. I'm not necessarily always a very balanced person. I get really intense about things. I'm a Leo ascendant, Leo 3 ascendant. If I get fired up about something, there's nobody that's going to talk me out of it. And that was really difficult. That has created a lot of difficulty for me in my youth and into my adulthood. And my dad was always preaching to me, balance, balance, balance. And he's so right, because when we go to these extremes, like for example, let's say that we are passionate about our art and we go to the extreme of we want to do our art every second of the day. And I've experienced this. I was so passionate about writing songs that I would be doing it for hours on end and not sleeping and not eating. And then when reality hit again, it would hit equally as hard because your body isn't getting what it needs. And it will say, I've had enough. You're going to pass out, or you're going to feel sick, or whatever it is. You're going to have a headache, whatever it is. The repercussions of bouncing back are much harder than if you were to pace yourself and say, well, I'm going to do this for a few hours here, and then I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to come back to it the next day. I'm going to take care of myself, and then I'm going to go forward with it. I really think there's such great wisdom within that. Okay, I think that we tend to just want to go to these extremes, and I really think that the spiritual philosophy that I appreciate, I think that resonates with me the most, is Taoism. And you can see that in the symbol of the yin yang, where you have the two forces, the light and the dark, constantly intermingling and creating that unified whole. And there is a little seed of the light within the dark and a little bit of a seed of the dark within the light, and they're always constantly intermingling with one another. And again, you go to one of those extremes, what you're doing is you're creating the seed of its opposite. So to me, that is the greatest wisdom at a full moon, is if we go to one of these extremes. Let's say we go to the extreme of defending our cherished belief to any end. We are seeding the opposition of resistance, rebellion, etc. If we go to the opposite extreme of losing our individuality within our Aquarian journey, we are seeding the opposition of like feeling lost to our individuality and to our light. We may feel a sense of depression, a Saturnian heaviness where we might feel invisible, right? So how do we balance those two things out in a way that is healthy? Tim is here. Nice to see you, Tim. Tim McKee says hello from South Carolina. First visit, and agree so much about Earth as a live organism. The Earth will cleanse itself as it needs. Yes, totally, Tim. I agree 100%. And that, I think, is a truth that is hard for humans to accept. because they feel like, well, we can fix anything. And I think to a certain extent we have done pretty well with fixing things when our backs are against the wall. But I agree 100% that this Earth Mother has limits, right? It is so abundant, but it will self-correct based on the way that it is treated in reciprocity. So I'm so glad that you're here, Tim. And Tim says, by the way, liked and subscribed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, friend. And I'm so happy to hear that there are more folks like us out there that are, trying to live this truth, and trying to see things as that interconnectedness. And so I'm grateful that you're here, my friend. Sergey says, speaking of Earth Mother, I'm about to buy an electric car. Oh my goodness. All right, Sergey. So that's a great way, right? Hopefully. I mean, I've heard mixed things about electric cars, but I think for the most part, there's some real positive things towards that, becoming less dependent on fossil fuels. I saw an article recently about a new battery that's coming out that has a range of 600 miles and will be able to recharge within 9 minutes, which is a huge game changer as far as making those viable for the average citizen, right? So the only issue I'm thinking about with the battery cars is the resources that it takes to make them, but we're still figuring all this out, right? Like, we're still figuring out what is the right way to do all this stuff. But I do think it's a step in the right direction, and I wish you luck with that. Yeah, Tim says, thanks, Spencer. Happy to be here. I'm happy you're here, friend. Okay, so, and again, this is the thing. I've talked about this on numerous occasions, but that story, that Taoist story of the horse that leaves the guy who finds the horse, and there's a series of events that the villagers deem good or bad, and the horse owner or the horse person says, well, maybe, I don't know, it's hard to tell, right? That is a great way to look at things too. It's like, sometimes when we're thinking about solutions, we don't necessarily know the long-term ramifications of it, but I do appreciate any effort to be a more responsible citizen of this earth and to try to find solutions towards sustainability. So everybody keep experimenting. And if the first thing that you tried it isn't the end solution, just keep trying. That's the whole nature of change, right? That's the whole kind of ability to flow with it. So be open to new information. Maybe there will be something in the future that makes electric cars obsolete and it is even more in alignment with the Tao and with equilibrium and balance. It's hard to say from this vantage point, but I think that people who are at least making an effort, that is the best we can do with the information that we have in the moment. Ani's taking up. Take care, Ani. Nice to see you. Thank you for your contributions today, my friend. Dimphy says, not only the resources to make those batteries, also the duration and disposal of them. So serious doubts at this side. Yeah, and again, that's what I was saying, that there's sometimes there's not always an easy solution. What I don't think is the solution is continuing to fill our cars with gasoline. We know that that's not the solution, and we know that has put us on the brink of extinction. So I think most of us can agree that is not a good solution. As far as the electric car goes, I think that we're still in the beginning phases of figuring out how to resource these things, like how to dispose of them and what the ramifications of their long-term production actually is. So I think it's worth exploring. So I don't have all the answers, but I'm open to the explorations. One thing I do think that, I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this, but every time I think about like replacing energetic sources with new technologies and things like that, I think part of my response is we just have to actually just consolidate our energetic consumption. Like, we just need to, instead of driving an electric car, we need to just drive less, Instead of finding ways to put a bunch of wind farms and solar panels everywhere, maybe we just need to actually use less electricity. Like that to me is, and that's not what people want to hear, but I think that that's actually one part of this. And I'm, I don't want to be a hypocrite either. I use plenty of electricity in my life. But I think that that's one thing to consider too, is how can we combine new technologies with reducing consumption and things of that nature as well. It's a whole different mindset. Again, I'll reference this book, Braiding Sweetgrass. When we understand the specialness of a resource, and there are many chapters in that book that talk about when you pick a wild strawberry and you've observed it go from a flower to a strawberry over the course of many months, there is something special about it because of its limited availability. When someone gives you a gift, it has more meaning, right? This is nature giving you a gift. It's so much different than just going to a store, pulling a basket of these off the shelf in a plastic container, and being able to just go and do that cycle every single week without seeing how it was made and how much time and love went into it. And I think that when you have that experience of having a gift or a reciprocal gift economy, or having that reciprocal nature with nature itself, our desire to consume changes. There's a change in our consumption around that. There is something where they were talking about experiments where someone left out things to take at a farmer's market as a gift, and people were much more conscientious of taking when there was a limited supply, that they were leaving some for others, right? This is sort of the honorable harvest type of thing. And we can apply that concept to energy as well. If we know the cost that it takes to make these energetic sources, we might be more conscientious about how we consume them. But we just take it for granted. We so take those things for granted these days. We flip on a light switch. We flip on the air conditioner. We do our artificial intelligence searches that take up 10 times more energy than a normal search, without even batting an eye. And if we saw the cost that it has on the environment firsthand, rather than being so disconnected from it, I think we would be a lot more conscientious about that. Painted Turtle says, as a Jupiter and Aquarius native, I feel all the feels, especially as Saturn went through the 8th there. Balance is the key, and let me say, so difficult to achieve, being pulled and needed in many directions at that time in my life. Yeah, I feel you. Sometimes it's hard to know what role we're going to play within all of this. But what I do know is that I think both a sense of urgency and a sense of timelessness are important. Now, I know oftentimes I sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but I am, because that is the reality of wholeness, is that it is both at the same time, right? So we need to have an urgency about the changes that we need to make, but we also need to understand them in the context of eons of time that this planet has been here. And that, maybe that the communities of animals and trees and plants and even human beings have been here. Human beings have been on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. And only in the last 200 to 300 have we accelerated our own demise at a point that is concerning. So we'll see. Tom says, speaking of not getting right the first time, Dyson made 5,000 prototypes before getting his vacuum cleaner right. Yeah, see? And so I think that when we're talking about things like electric batteries and trying to encourage that innovation while also being critical of the process, that is a great example, Tom, is that we as inventors, we don't always get it right the first time, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying, right? So that type of innovation, that kind of solutions that we're trying to find, we may have some hiccups along the way, but I think that it's the essence behind it, the intention behind it, is what is the most important. Tim says, I have no placements in Aquarius natal chart, but Aquarius in the 8th house. Oh, okay. So, Tim, so you have a Cancer rising, potentially. Okay. So, yeah, you might be feeling this with your resources and your personal resources and the resources of others, potentially, with this full moon, my friend. And maybe there's some discussions about how to divide those up and who's responsible for what. Yeah, Tim says yes in the North Node, for sure. Laura says, it can also be the smallest things that change the whole world. In 1801, a pharmacist completely changed food by creating an easy way to make baking soda. Absolutely. Yeah, so Laura, you're so spot on. And we talked about this earlier, too, about the universe. Scale is, we always overestimate scale, right? Sometimes we underestimate scale, okay? I don't think we as human beings have the correct relationship with it most of the time, because we tend to glorify big things and ignore small things. And like you were saying, small actions can have grand ripples out into time. So never underestimate your own personal role within change, or underestimate how much life is in a square inch of your backyard, right? Which I would suggest not putting Roundup or chemicals on. That would be something to think about with that. Is there are universes within universes in even that tiny little space. Yeah, Tim says Cancer rising. Yep. Nice, friend. Okay, so let's do this. Let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these Decanic themes. And then what we'll do after that is I'll take you just through a little bit of the week after this. Does that sound good, friends? Before I do that, do me a huge favor, friends. Please like and subscribe like Tim did. Appreciate you, my friend. We're going to stretch out. And go follow me over at spencermichaud.com on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. I also have a Facebook page if you want to follow Spencer Michaud Astrology over there. You can also find me at spencermichaud.com. If you're enjoying the broadcast today, we're just taking a little stretch break here. Take a little stretch. Get a glass of water. It's always good to move your body around, especially when we're doing a lot of intense mental work like we're doing today. The brain works better when it's connected to the body. All right. I'll check back in with our chat here today. Tom says there's a great PBS program called Connections and how the search for one solution led to the discovery of others. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because it's the intention. It's the spirit of discovery, right? And I think that's great, because when we're trying to find one solution, even if it isn't the exact solution that will fix everything, it can lead to some incredible new pathways that we may never have found had we not tried to pursue the first path. So keep that in mind too, and you know, go get your electric car if you want to replace your gas guzzling machine, right? And that's actually not necessarily a bad start, right? Hopefully we'll keep innovating and be able to find even better solutions as we go along. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring up the Decans of Leo, which is on sale for the next 4 days or so. So if you are enjoying this talk today and you want to learn more about the Decans in particular, go check out those webinars. And they're not just Decan focused. There is mythology around each sign. We touch on fixed stars in those webinars. We talk about the planets that rule not only the sign itself, but each Decan has its own planetary ruler. In this case, the ruler of Leo 3 is Mars. The ruler of Aquarius 3 is the moon. So the moon is actually in its own face, or in its own Decan in this full moon. Okay. So Leo 3, here we see that figure that is standing his ground, and he's trying to get knocked off the Well, he's not trying. Someone is trying to knock him off of his position of power. So it's a martial decan. There are themes of courage and bravery, desperate measures where our backs are against the wall, defending your authenticity or your right to be. Much of the literature associated with this decan discusses the unbreakable will. You know, the ability to dig your heels in and say, I'm going to find this inner strength that will get me to the other side, right? Fighting your way out of a corner. Spirit pushing you past the natural limits of the body. I've said this on many occasions, but I have the ascendant in Leo 3, and I was an athlete in my younger days of modest physical ability. But my passion pushed my body, my very average 5'10", 155-pound body to its extreme. And I was a successful athlete because of that intensity. I also sustained a number of injuries because I didn't know the limits of my body. I didn't care. I will say I didn't respect the limits of my body the same way that I do now. I just put it all out there, and that brought me some great success. And it also brought me some times where I couldn't participate because life itself had slowed me down. And I think that's a good lesson here too, is if you do decide to push past the natural limits of the body, sometimes you can sustain an injury that will force you to slow down. So we want to be very conscientious of when to utilize this ability and when we just need to let things go, right? We need to let things go. I have changed significantly when it comes to the distribution of my energy. I realized that in my middle years, however you want to define that, that I just have to shift the outpouring of energy. I have to rest a little bit more. I can't sit down and do something for 8 hours at a time without eating or without taking a break or without stretching. I can't speak for 4 hours on my internet channel here without standing up and taking a drink of water, things like that. Like, because honestly, I would. Sometimes I just get so into it and so focused that I'm losing sense of time and space. But I've had to learn how to listen to my body and respect its limits. So a couple questions you could ask yourself about the animating principle of the sun's role within this full moon. What personal ideals are worth defending? You know, what will you do when your back is up against the wall? What reserves of inner strength can you draw upon? Can you maintain the will to carry on? And also, which of these hills do you want to die on, right? And which are worth defending and which ones are not? Because that is a huge lesson for Leo in general, but this decan in general, is learning that not everything that you get really fired up about is worth fighting to the death about. And trust me, I've had so many of those situations in my life. I have tried to cultivate peace, inner peace, kindness, but a lot of it is cultivated through making an enormous amount of mistakes in my life through my own stubbornness, combativeness, and intensity. So I've come to some of these other ways of being honestly, and I'm by no means a completed project. Okay, you can also ask yourself, is it time to concede your ground, or stand your ground, or concede the throne? We see this in some of our political leaders right now. A couple on the Republican side of the aisle, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, both have the ascendant, I believe, in this decan of Leo. And we've seen the difficulty that Mr. Trump has had with conceding his throne of power, to the point of like just creating chaos to maintain his position. So you can, when you aren't acknowledging the need to step down off of a position, it can lead to more and more lapses of your integrity. So knowing the difference between when to stand up for something and when to say, yeah, this is, maybe I'll live to fight another day. It's really important, and really important when we get through this potential area. Yeah, and Laura's pointing out Trump has Mars here too. So he has Mars in its own decan, just really animating that part of this particular decan. So like for me, I have the North Node and the Ascendant here, but I don't have Mars there. Like that's the biggest, I would say, the biggest difference in that position with his chart and my own. So he has that martial energy really fueling that, like really like being very combative. I'm a Mars Virgo, so my combativeness is a little bit more subdued. It's not that it's not there. It's just more, if I get in a fight with somebody, it's not as blustery. It's more like, I fight with facts. I fight with, details. What inspires your faith in the times of darkness? This one's important too. I was reviewing Mr. Austin Kopek's thoughts about these decans before my live stream today, and there is a spirit in this decan called Serapis, who was a solar figure, a solar king, but also was somehow related to being a leader of the underworld. And Austin had some really nice reflections about the eternity of the sun, even when it is going beneath the horizon into the underworld, and the ability to sort of be reborn each day. So having this, how are you going to maintain that light when the chips are down? I think this is an important theme that we have here. Okay. Sergey says, hold on a second. Well, I'll come back to this, Sergey. There was some nice conversation about asteroids between community members. And then Painted Turtle says, I really felt when Spencer said no more kings, some of the active energy I'm observing that seems to have some say in the coming Aquarian energy are those objects beyond Neptune. So that was in reference to potentially some asteroids. Sergey says, I have my ascendant at 29 degrees Leo, okay, very close to the fixed star Regulus. No need to step down from a throne when you don't have a throne in the first place. Yeah, I mean, thrones are relative, Sergey. I think that we can feel disempowered materially, but still have a spiritual throne that we sit upon. I know this has been the case many times in my own life. I've never been really a monetarily wealthy person, but I definitely have a lot of pride. So there are times when, maybe I don't have as much as somebody else, but there is like kind of this like, well, I'll be damned if someone's going to treat me that way type of throne, right? So we always have to kind of examine it from multiple perspectives, right? We can feel disempowered in a lot of areas of our life, but how do we maintain our dignity within that, right? And also, when do we humble ourselves when it's necessary? I have a lot of difficulty with that sometimes in my life, my friend. And I'm sure that a lot of Leo ascendants and placements can attest to that kind of feeling when, if you're getting disrespected in the moment, it's that look that you look around, you're like, who are you talking to? You can't possibly be talking to me, because no one would ever talk to me that way. But that can get you into trouble if you're having that type of energy in a position where you need to subordinate your desires and subordinate to a situation that has more power than you do. I believe, let me see. I'm just trying to think about this today. Subordination wasn't one of ours for today for our I-Ching, but there was one for August, I believe, that hexagram number 54 that talked about being like the concubine in a situation. And sometimes we have to understand when we aren't necessarily the central figure. Sergey says, I have my ascendant in Mercury at 29 degrees Leo. I don't have a throne to step down from. Well, Sergey, I hope that you have a light that is worth defending, right? A purpose, maybe, that is your metaphorical throne. Painted Turtle says, named after underworld deities, creator deities, and those scattered disk objects, make, Orcus, Homea, Cilicia. These are all asteroids, Painted Turtle? Okay, we'll have to take a look at that. Tim says, my sun in Mars and Aries, sun at 29 degrees. Oh my goodness. So you've got some pretty intense dignity there with the sun in its exaltation and Mars in its own domicile at the both at the anaretic degree of Aries. Some pretty powerful stuff there, my friend. And if you're Cancer rising in the 10th house, the 10th whole sign house. So some pretty interesting to learn what you do for a living with that 10th house being lit up like that, my friend. That decan of Aries is really about winning over a hostile crowd. So I would imagine that maybe in your work you may have a lot of abilities to utilize your charisma and humor to win people over to your side, maybe through mediation or through empowering people or getting people excited about things. There's a position of a good motivational speaker type as well. Yeah, Tim says, I'm a self-employed contractor. Well, you probably have to deal with people that are probably, giving you guff about their projects, right? And I'm sure that you use your charisma in that work for sure. Says, I can certainly be confrontational and provoked. Yeah, we all can, my friend. Steven says, Mars in Aries here, 26 degrees in the 5th, Chiron at 4 degrees, Aries too. I think I sort of revert to the wound before I retaliate. Yeah, so another Mars in Aries 3 type of experience, Stephen. I think that, Tim's saying people follow me willingly. Yeah, well, when you're nice to people, when you have charisma, people want to follow along, right? And Stephen, this is another thing with your Mars in the 3rd decan of Aries where, being able to utilize your will and towards, softening the blow. That is a Venus face of a Mars-ruled sign. So being able to utilize our social graces to maybe nudge the arrow in the direction we want it to go can be important when you have those types of placements. All right, so friends, let's take a look over at the decans of Aquarius. So just to review, Sun and Mercury are going to be separating from their cazimi in Leo 3. The host of the Sun, it's in its own domicile. So the host of the Sun portion of this full moon is Leo 3. And now we look at the decans of Aquarius to get sort of that other part and factor. We've talked about this a lot today, but let's just go through it. Here is a slide from the Aquarius decans webinar that you can find on the store tab on my website, spencermichaud.com. So themes of releasing and untying old karmic knots. Ooh, I love that, right? This is a decan where we might be revisiting some kind of frustration from the past, but for the purpose of moving on. Like there is a spirit in this decan called Osiris. And Osiris was murdered by his brother-in-law Set and had to be reclaimed from all of the pieces that he'd been split into and cast around the countryside. Isis, his wife, had to collect all the pieces of him and reconstruct him, but not for a permanent rebirth. It was so that they could mate and so that the new god, Horus, could be born. So this might also be a revisiting, especially with Mercury retrograde, a revisiting of some ideals that we have that we may need to change so that we can move forward. And we don't want to just get stuck in this permanent conflict, but we may need to be not comfortable, we may need to accept that we will have some frustrations around this. So growing disgust and frustration is a theme with this decan. Netzach and Yetzirah is related to the Kabbalistic tree of life, and maybe knowing when to quit in a situation, disenchantment, divine discontent, embracing the unknown, being able to move out into new territory is associated with this. So questions you could ask yourself about the moon portion of this. What situation in your life is no longer tenable? Where can you make a graceful exit? What can be salvaged from this situation and what debts need to be paid? Remember, 2 of those swords are left behind, right? In this card, the 7 of swords, he's carrying the wisdom, 5 swords with him, sneaking away from the encampment, but he's leaving a few things behind. This may also be related to the honorable harvest, where when we go and we forage out in the woods, we don't take everything. We leave something for the rest of the animals and for the plant itself to be able to regenerate itself. So something to think about with that as well. How can you use your detachment to your advantage? One of the things I can say about being a Leo type is that it's very easy to fall victim to a subjective perspective. We can get so focused on our own viewpoint that it's hard to see things from other points of view. And Aquarius can come in to be the balancing factor to say, hey, maybe you should see it not just from one other individual's point of view, but how your individual point of view fits into a greater interconnectedness of relationships. And then finally, what will be born from this liberation? And that's a direct reference to the Osiris myth. Coming back together and dealing with some frustration from the past and trying to unravel a knot is not so that you can continue to fight the battle over and over and over again. It's so that something new can be born. So that's where the letting go part comes in. It says, you know what? You don't have to keep fighting the same argument over and over and over again. Yes, you can revisit some grievances, but let them go. And then something new will be born from that letting go period. Okay. Just checking in with our chat here. Let's see. Tim says, some people love me and some people hate me, both for the same reason, right? Yeah, I hear you. I have an animal that I work with as a guide, and it's the skunk. And the skunk has that sort of a power to attract, but equal power to repel. And I have to check in with my own energy when I'm, based on how I'm attracting and repelling. And maybe you have a little bit of that type of energy as well, Tim. If you have any experience with skunks, they may be messaging you to think about what you're sharing, what type of energy you're sharing with the world. But the other lesson with that, Tim, is that we're not for everyone. That's a tough Leonine lesson to learn. But it's so true that when we're being true to ourselves, the people that don't share our values sometimes will just fade away from our lives, and that's okay. Like I said, we don't have to try to be everything to everyone. Yeah, Steven says, Pepe Le Pew, absolutely. Right. Dawn is here, says, hi everyone, catching the end again, working part of the day in the office on Fridays. I keep missing y'all live. Oh, well, Dawn, I'm glad that you're stopping in, and I feel your presence here, so thank you so much for being here today. Laura says, my cat has that same energy. That's fun. Tim says, skunks are great, but they are ferocious. They definitely can be. They will give you a warning before they spray. And they'll bite too, right? But they will stamp their feet. They'll show you, they'll say, hey, they'll give you a little warning that says, if you don't get out of my territory, you're going to be in trouble, right? So skunks, I think generally would prefer peaceful alternatives, because when they spray, it takes a while for them to regenerate that spray. So they use it as a last resort. So I think skunks can also teach us that, hey, sometimes we don't have to necessarily spray everyone, but we can just give a gentle boundary warning so that we can continue on peacefully with our lives. Yeah, Dawn says, most folks are ferocious if they have no other way out. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is part of what we're learning with this, the sun being in that third decan of Leo, is how vicious sometimes we can become when we feel like our backs are up against the wall. All right, friends. So let's move forward here. We are going to take a look at some of the things that are going to happen in the week ahead. So we've talked about the decans of Aquarius. We've got the moon in Aquarius III. We haven't really discussed the host of the moon. So let's talk about Saturn retrograde in Pisces real quick, because that is what is going to be attempting to provide resources to the moon, but might have difficulty doing so. Excuse me. Because of the fact that it's in aversion to the moon. So when we have a planet that's on either side of the conjunction with the planet or either side of an opposition, it's said to be in sort of a dark house, or one that is not able to witness or provide its resources very easily to that planet. So the moon might be trying to draw upon the resources of Saturn and Pisces, where the surrendering energy, but it is in a blind spot. So we might be blind to the fact that we have to surrender, right? That we have to let the plan play out. I've been going through this with just a little hobby, a little collecting hobby I've been, getting sort of obsessed with. But there are times when I want to have the collection complete, right? Like Little Mermaid. You know, wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm the boy that has everything on eBay? But you have to realize sometimes too that not every opportunity that comes to you is one that will be resolved or a good deal or whatever it is. And sometimes you have to surrender to the process of time before you can achieve your goal. Whether it's something like a collection or whether it's something like a relationship or anything in your life, it can be multifaceted and multivalent. So we may be a little bit blind to the fact that we need to surrender a little bit to the process and that we don't necessarily have all the facts. We don't have all the information. And we don't necessarily have to stress over it either. Mars and Jupiter and Gemini too might lead us to overthink some things. And with Saturn in that overcoming position, I really do think if you surrender to Saturn's overcoming power, that you'll have a better time at this particular lunation. All right, the first aspect that we are seeing is, I'll show you here. It's going to be a conjunction with retrograde Saturn. So the first aspect that we look at is one that happens when we have the planet moving outside of what's called being under the bond. So when the moon is on either side, a 15-degree orb of the conjunction with the sun or in opposition with the sun, it's said to be under the bond. And it's sort of like the moon being held in check for a while. Then the moon being a planet that brings things into manifestation. So we might be getting awareness of a situation while the moon's under the bond. We're getting information, but taking action on it might not happen until we fully understand what's going on. So when the moon hits Saturn, that isn't a perfect opportunity to realize that we might not be able to do everything that we want to do and might have to surrender to more patience. We might have to surrender to understanding that we still need to have more information, to the ability to see when we are overestimating our abilities, our resources, etc. And the other thing that Saturn can do on the flip positive side is it can actually concretize a vision or a dream. So this also could potentially be something like a dream that you've been thinking about or that's been on the back burner that finally comes to a completion. Saturn has the energy of bringing things to conclusions. Now, whether that conclusion is positive or negative, that is for you to find out. But I do think that this will be a pivotal moment on Tuesday after the full moon on Monday. Okay, let's see. Oh, Dawn, thank you so much for the super sticker, my friend. Appreciate you and your generosity. Thank you for stopping in, and really appreciate you as a member of our community here. Tim says, I began my journey about 4 years ago as my energy changed. You're correct. Many people faded away from me. And that's okay, right? Yeah, Tim says some opportunities can be tests. Like, not everyone has to be for us. And that is super okay, especially with all of those Aries placements that you have, Tim. Being able to sever from the mother plant, and it doesn't necessarily mean just your physical mother. It could just be something that where you may have been dependent on. The journey of self-discovery is super important with those Aries placements and the individuation process. So you're right on track, friend. So thank you so much, Dawn, for that super sticker. Dawn says, and if it's meant to be, I always find it comes back around and usually at a better deal or benefit. Right, totally. I'm learning that in this process as I'm learning about different market tendencies and things like that. And yeah, sometimes an opportunity can be too good to be true. I also, in my journey to collect something, I fell victim to a scammer on Facebook the other day. Because the deal was too good to be true, and that ultimately proved to be true. I got my money back. But it was a lesson in not trying to force the river and learning to be more discerning rather than only seeing what you want to see. So lots of lessons throughout all of this. Tim is saying, astrology has been so helpful in discovering who I am. Yeah, Tim, that is one of the beautiful parts about studying astrology is when we understand ourselves and our tendencies, I think the acceptance that we have is for ourselves and other people, our tolerance can be greatly enhanced. And that is a great gift, especially when we are gentler on ourselves. That can help us to be more kind and forgiving of others over time. Dawn says, same, Tim. I wish I had pursued it when I was younger instead of letting folks talk me out of it. Now I teach all the kids about it. All right, so you're spreading the gospel of astrology. Now I will say I don't necessarily think of astrology as a religion. I like to think of it as a tool, a co-creation, a divinatory practice. I think there are spiritual aspects to it, but it's not my religion. All right. So we've got that first aspect, the moon conjunct Saturn retrograde. And then what we see after this experience is we've got the sun moving into Virgo. So very shortly after this full moon, we have a big shift in our energy, right? On the 22nd, the sun is ingressing into Virgo. And I'm going to keep the full moon on the inner circle, and then the transits as it unfolds on the outer circle here. So a big shift in our energy. We're going to see the sun move out of its own domicile into the domicile of Mercury. It's going to be hosted by a retrograde Mercury in Leo that is in aversion to it. So that might complicate things just a little bit. But this is an opportunity for us to learn about the skills that we need and the where we need to preserve something against the ravages of time and to prepare ourselves for the coming winter, so that we might feel like, okay, it's time to get down to business. This is oftentimes when kids are going back to school. There's all sorts of new learning processes starting. It's a good opportunity to sign up for new classes and things like that. So keep your eyes peeled for new offerings at Spencer Michaud Astrology. All right, then we get to, on the 26th, we've got a last quarter moon. So here is the last quarter moon in Gemini squaring, okay, the sun in Virgo. So I'll back it up so you can see it exact. So there it is at 4 degrees of Gemini. The moon is at 4 degrees of Gemini squaring the Virgo sun. So this is a time where we are letting go. This is an existential crisis where we're reconsidering some things from the past, where we might be feeling like we're trying to consolidate all the information that we took on at the full moon and then prepare for a new cycle. The moon in Gemini 1 is represented by the 8 of Swords, where there's a figure that is kind of bound and paralyzed by their own analysis, maybe too many thoughts. This could be where we're letting go of overthinking things so that we can actually take action on some of them. Virgo is a very practical sign that says, hey, you have all these ideas. Now it's time to make something with it. So to do that, we may have to let go of some other options. And this is a really good opportunity to move forward with letting go of some of the ideas that really aren't worth putting our time and energy into. Doesn't mean you have to start the new thing yet. It just means you have to weed out what is going to be important and what isn't around this period of time. Okay, let's see. So that is pretty much the week ahead, right? So what we can do now is let's go over to the I-Ching and see what the I-Ching has to say for us here. So here is the I-Ching. I was asking, what is the essence of the full moon in Aquarius III in 2024? And I got hexagram number 49, changing to hexagram number 17. So 49 translates to revolution. Hexagram 17 translates to following or adapting. So we may have some shocking surprises where something needs to change. The other ways to think about this hexagram 49, molting, shedding old skin, metamorphosis, transformation, out with the old, right? We're revisiting something to liberate ourselves from those past fixed positions that just aren't serving us anymore, okay? So the changing line that we have here is the third changing line. And it says, starting brings misfortune. Perseverance brings danger. When talk of revolution has made the rounds 3 times, there is confidence. So this probably is telling us to slow down and not be too hasty. All right. And the animal that we've got today is going to reinforce that. So we may feel when we're pulled in all these different directions that we have to do something, we have to act now, right? And that's not always the case. Sometimes we feel like we'll miss our opportunity if we don't press the button right now. But oftentimes we need to let more information come, and we need to have more time pass and more preparation, okay? So try not to be too rash is what this line is telling us. Yes, there are changes that need to be made, but we don't have to make them all at once. Sometimes when a knot is very complicated, then we're referring back to the knot of Aquarius III. If you pull on it super tightly, super quickly, all it does is it gets tighter. What you have to do when you have a complicated knot is sometimes you have to pull one piece out very slowly, and that in turn helps loosen another part. And you just have to be very intentional about it without forcing it. So this is an opportunity for us not to force things in our life, right? The I-Ching is telling us, hey, maybe you don't want to force this issue. And that leads us to hexagram number 17, following, allegiance, loyalty, hunting, adaptability, being adaptable. So that flexibility that we see in the mutable T-square is what's required to get us forward through all of this. Okay, we need to make sure that when we are being strong leaders, Leo, right? We need to learn how to be in service of the people that we are trying to lead. Super important, huge shift in saying, well, I'm leading because I want to be great. No, I'm leading because I want to be of service. And if that will give people a reason to believe in your vision. People are very rarely will support someone if they feel like their vision is just completely self-centered. If that vision is to bring and uplift others, that is something that people can get on board with. So that is something to consider, is how can we be both adaptable and learn to shine our light as well. Okay, but again, the knots that we've created in life, sometimes those sticky situations have been years and years and years of frustrations. And it isn't always like just you snap your fingers and it's done. It took a while to get to that place, and it might take a little bit to unravel. All right. Let's see here. Yes. Laura says Saturn likes us to go slowly and carefully up the mountain. And that's the host of the moon, right? That's the host of this lunation is Saturn. So I really think Saturn's in the driver's seat. And if we embrace our Saturnine nature, if we embrace Kronos, I think that is the best way to work through this energy. All right, so we have one more oracular guide for us today, and that is our animal. And the animal that I got for you today, it's one of the most Saturnian animals ever. It's a tortoise. It is a beautiful symbol that came up that said, hey, slow down. No need to be hasty. Tortoises are very, very long-lived. They're very slow. They take their time. They chew their food very slowly. They move slowly. They can grow to great proportions over many, many years. So this is something to consider. Like a small action that you may start may grow into a much bigger experience over time, but it takes time. It takes time. The tortoise is a huge symbol for asking us to not rush things. When we take our time with things, that allows us to endure. If you look for a quick fix, if you look for an easy solution, that can often leave you vulnerable to people that could take advantage of you. When you slow down, and again, this happened to me. I wanted my collection to be complete, and my rashness led me into a situation of someone that was trying to take advantage of my naivete and of my passion. All right. But when you slow down and you let things happen in their own time, piece by piece, that's the type of thing that can endure over time. And one of I think the greatest survival mechanisms of this creature is the ability to retreat. Look at what they have this beautiful shell that they can retreat into when they feel threatened or in danger. So this is also giving us messages to, if the experience in your life has gotten a little too little too hot to handle. Sometimes retreating from it can be the best way to eventually move forward over time. So I think this is just a really beautiful symbol that really echoes a lot of the messaging, not only within the oracular symbolism of the planets, but also of what we saw in the I-Ching and the tarot as well. So my friends, that is what I've got for you today. I'm going to check back in with the chat one more time here, and we'll see where we're at. Do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Appreciate all of your comments today. If you're listening, even if you're listening after the fact, leave me a comment. Let me know you were here. I love just seeing everyone here. Dawn says, everything always seems to come back to Saturn for me. As much of a Sagittarius as I am, it always comes back to Saturn across the way. Doesn't it always, right? We can't avoid our ultimate Saturnian reapers at the end, right? And whether that is the transition in death or in the endings that are inevitable in other areas of our life. Don says, my kitten is patting Spencer's face on the screen as he talks. It's the cutest thing ever. Oh, that's awesome, Don. Oh, well, hello, kitty. Nice to see you. I'll get a little scritch back. Here, I'll scritch you. There you go. Now you get some scritches. I love kitties. Okay, yes, so cute. Absolutely. Candy Corn says, go slow it is. I'm feeling this right now. Absolutely. Tim says, Saturn is in Pisces in the 8th house. Yes. Take it slow, Tim. One day at a time, right? Saturn is a strong pull on you, Tim, right? Oh, Laura, thank you so much for the super sticker, friend. Thank you for your generosity. Really appreciate that. Thank you for being such a wonderful supporter of the channel and my work. And yeah, reach out if you're in need of guidance. My schedule is pretty free right now. So if any of you would like to schedule a reading, now is a pretty good time to do so as well. Steven says, Saturn is the teacher, the taskmaster, the guy holding the ruler. Absolutely. I agree. Let's see. Dawn says, I have 7 cats. I rescued one. If you like, I'll bring it halfway. Well, as tempting as that is, Dawn, I have two fur babies myself, 2 17-pound big boys that take up a lot of my attention and resources. So I think I'm okay right now. But I'm happy that you are being a good fur mom to those 7 babies, and they've got a good situation there, it sounds like. All right, my friends, that is what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Do me a huge favor. Go over to spencermichaud.com. Check out those offerings at the Book Now button and in the store. Again, last few days of the Leo sale. Virgo stuff should be on sale in a little bit. I also have a webinar called Stars and Cards that talks about the connection between tarot and the astrological decans with a lot of chart examples within it. So that's a great one to pick up as well. And you can also follow me over at Spencer Michaud on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. That's a great way to keep up with what's going on. I make announcements about live streams and classes, and especially on Instagram, I post a lot about what's going on in my garden with the butterflies and the animals and things of that nature. So it's been fun hanging out with you all today. Thank you so much for your time today. And we will see you the next time, okay? Thank you, friends. Appreciate you. And we'll see you next week. Remember, everyone's going to be feeling a little bit intense, the full moon. It's never a mistake to be kind, okay? So that goes for being kind to other people, especially with Mars and Jupiter and Gemini. You know, your words matter, but it's equally important to be kind to yourself, right? We're all doing the best that we can, and we're all doing the best we can with the light that we have in this moment. So be equally as kind to yourself in these moments as you are trying to be out externally as well. So thank you so much, friends, and thank you for the new and returning folks here. I really appreciate you as a community, and we'll see you the next time, okay? All right, my friends, have a good one. Peace.